My name is Bill Richardson, and I'm about to tell you the most unbelievable story of how my HOA neighbor Karen Mitchell banned fishing equipment as a community safety hazard, and how my lawsuit exposed her systematic harassment campaign that cost her everything she owned. At 72 years old, I thought I had found the perfect place to enjoy my retirement. Pine Lake Estates was a quiet community in northern Michigan, surrounded by pristine lakes and forests that reminded me of my childhood. After 45 years as a high school shop teacher, I was looking forward to spending my golden years doing what I loved most: fishing. My late wife Dorothy and I had moved to Pine Lake Estates 3 years earlier, specifically because the community was marketed to outdoor enthusiasts. The HOA materials we received during the buying process featured photos of residents fishing from the community dock, hiking the nature trails, and enjoying outdoor activities. Dorothy had passed away 18 months ago after a short illness, and fishing had become my primary way of coping with the grief and loneliness. I would spend hours on the lake, finding peace in the quiet rhythm of casting and waiting, remembering the countless times Dorothy and I had fished together over our 47-year marriage. My garage was organized like a small tackle shop, with carefully maintained rods, reels, tackle boxes, and all the equipment I had collected over decades of fishing. I took pride in keeping everything clean, organized, and properly stored. My fishing gear represented not just a hobby, but a lifetime of memories and my connection to the outdoor life that had always sustained me. What I didn't know was that Karen Mitchell, who had moved in next door 6 months earlier, was already planning to destroy this peaceful retirement I had worked so hard to achieve. Karen Mitchell was a 48-year-old recent divorcee who had moved to Pine Lake Estates, claiming she wanted to embrace the outdoor lifestyle. But it quickly became apparent that her idea of outdoor living involved controlling what everyone else was allowed to do outside. The first sign of trouble came on a beautiful Saturday morning in May. I was loading my fishing gear into my truck for a day on the lake when Karen appeared at the property line between our houses. "Mr. Richardson, I need to discuss a serious safety concern with you," she announced, holding her ever-present clipboard. "Good morning, Karen. What's on your mind?" "I've been observing your fishing equipment storage and activities, and I'm very concerned about the safety hazards you're creating for our community." I looked at my neatly organized tackle box and fishing rods. "Safety hazards? Karen, it's just fishing gear." "It's not just anything, Mr. Richardson. You have multiple sharp objects, hooks, knives, and potentially dangerous equipment stored in your garage and transported through our community on a daily basis." "Karen, fishing hooks and fillet knives are normal fishing equipment. I've been fishing for 60 years without any safety incidents." "That may be true in the past, but we now have children in this community, and we need to prioritize safety over individual recreational preferences. The kids love watching me clean, fish. I've been teaching some of them about fishing and outdoor skills." "That's exactly the problem! You're exposing children to sharp objects and dangerous activities without proper safety protocols or parental supervision." I stared at her in disbelief. "Karen, teaching kids to fish is a normal outdoor activity. Their parents are always present and appreciate the instruction." "Mr. Richardson, as a concerned community member, I've been researching HOA safety regulations, and I believe we need to implement proper controls over potentially hazardous recreational equipment." "Controls? What kind of controls?" "Safety inspections, storage requirements, transportation protocols, and possibly restrictions on certain types of dangerous equipment." "You want to restrict fishing equipment in a community that was marketed to outdoor enthusiasts?" "I want to ensure that recreational activities don't compromise the safety and well-being of all residents, especially vulnerable populations like children and elderly residents." I was getting annoyed. "Karen, I am an elderly resident and fishing is my primary recreation. It's also perfectly safe when done responsibly." "Age doesn't exempt anyone from community safety standards, Mr. Richardson. If anything, elderly residents should be more careful about activities that could result in accidents or injuries." "Fishing accidents? Karen, what exactly are you worried about?" "Hook injuries, cutting accidents, equipment malfunctions, unsupervised access to sharp objects by children, and the general proliferation of potentially dangerous items throughout our community. This is ridiculous. Fishing is one of the safest outdoor activities there is. That's your opinion, but safety is not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of proper regulation and community standards. As she walked away, Karen called back, "I'll be discussing this with the HOA board at our next meeting. We need to address these safety concerns before someone gets hurt." 2 weeks later, I received an official letter from the Pine Lake Estates HOA board. The return address showed Karen Mitchell as the new Community Safety Coordinator, a position that apparently hadn't existed until she created it. Community Safety Violation Notice. Dear Mr. Richardson, this letter serves as official notice that your property has been found in violation of newly implemented community safety standards regarding the storage and use of potentially hazardous recreational equipment. Specific violations include unsecured storage of sharp objects, fishing hooks, knives, gaffs, transportation of dangerous equipment through common areas, exposure of children to hazardous recreational activities, failure to obtain proper safety permits for equipment, storage non-compliance with new community safety protocols. You have 30 days to bring your property into compliance with these safety standards or face escalating enforcement actions. I read the letter 3 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. Karen had somehow gotten herself appointed to a made-up position and was using it to target my fishing equipment. I immediately called Tom Wilson, who I knew served on the HOA board. "Tom, did the board really approve new safety standards that require permits for fishing equipment?" "Bill, I have no idea what you're talking about. We haven't discussed any new safety standards, and we certainly haven't created any position called Community Safety Coordinator. Karen Mitchell just sent me a violation notice claiming I need permits to store fishing gear." "She sent you what?" "Bill, Karen isn't even on the HOA board. She requested to join some committees, but we haven't appointed her to any official positions." "Then how is she sending official HOA violation notices?" "She's not. At least not with any board authorization. This sounds like Karen is making up rules and positions that don't exist." Tom agreed to look into the situation, but warned me that Karen had been causing problems since she moved in. "She's been filing complaints about every outdoor activity in the community. Last month, she wanted to ban grilling because of fire hazards. The month before that, she tried to restrict gardening tools as weapon safety concerns. Is she trying to ban all outdoor activities? It seems like she's trying to control everything everyone does. But don't worry, the board isn't going to let her make up fake rules about fishing equipment." Despite Tom's assurances, Karen's harassment campaign escalated dramatically over the next month. She began conducting what she called safety inspections of my property, walking through my yard with a clipboard and taking photographs of my fishing equipment. When I confronted her about these unauthorized inspections, her response was both bold and delusional. "Mr. Richardson, as Community Safety Coordinator, I have full authority to inspect properties for compliance with safety standards." "Karen, Tom Wilson told me the board never created that position. The board granted me emergency authority to address immediate safety concerns. Perhaps Mr. Wilson wasn't present during that discussion. Show me the documentation of this emergency authority. I don't need to show you anything. My authority is clearly established in the community safety protocols that I've developed and implemented." "Protocols you developed? Karen, you can't just make up rules and claim they're official HOA policy." "I can and I have. Someone needs to take responsibility for community safety, and since the board has been negligent in addressing these hazards, I've stepped up to protect our residents." Karen then pulled out what appeared to be an official-looking document. "This is the Pine Lake Estates Community Safety Manual that I've created based on extensive research into HOA safety regulations and liability issues." I looked at the document, which was clearly something she had created on her home computer, but formatted to look official. "Karen, this isn't real HOA policy. You can't create your own manual and pretend it's official. It's completely real and completely official. I've submitted it to the board for ratification, and until they vote to reject it, it remains in effect as emergency safety protocol. That's not how HOA governance works. That's exactly how modern HOA governance works when dealing with urgent safety issues that require immediate action." She then handed me an updated violation notice that was even more elaborate than the first. "Final safety violation notice. Compliance required within 48 hours. Mr. Richardson, Your continued non-compliance with community safety standards has escalated to a Level 3 safety emergency. You are hereby ordered to remove all fishing hooks, knives, and sharp objects from your property. Surrender all dangerous fishing equipment to HOA safety storage. Obtain written permits before engaging in any fishing activities. Complete mandatory. Safety training before equipment can be returned. Pay safety violation penalties totaling $2,847. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in immediate enforcement actions, including equipment confiscation and possible legal proceedings. I stared at the document in amazement. Karen, you're demanding that I give you my fishing equipment and pay almost $3,000 in fake penalties? I'm demanding that you comply with legitimate safety standards designed to protect our community from preventable accidents and liability exposure. This is completely insane. This is completely necessary. Your fishing activities represent a clear and present danger to community safety, and I won't allow that danger to continue. Word of Karen's fake fishing equipment bans spread through Pine Lake Estates like wildfire. It turned out that I wasn't her only target. She had been systematically harassing anyone in the community who engaged in outdoor activities. Bob Mitchell, no relation to Karen, had received violation notices for his hunting equipment. Sarah Davis was cited for dangerous gardening tools. The Johnson family was threatened with penalties for their children's camping gear. Tom Wilson called an emergency HOA board meeting to address what he called the Karen situation. The community center was packed with angry residents who were tired of Karen's fake authority and harassment campaigns. When Karen arrived, she looked confident and prepared, carrying multiple boxes of what she claimed were safety documentation and violation reports. "Thank you all for coming to this important community safety meeting," she announced, apparently, thinking she was in charge. "Karen," Tom Wilson interrupted, "this meeting is about your unauthorized activities, not community safety. My activities are completely authorized by the emergency safety powers granted to me by community necessity." "What emergency safety powers?" "The board never granted you any powers. The board's failure to address urgent safety issues automatically grants emergency authority to qualified community safety professionals." "Qualified by whom? You're not a safety professional." Karen pulled out what appeared to be a certificate. "I'm a certified community safety specialist through the National Association of Residential Safety Management." Tom examined the certificate. "Karen, this looks like something you printed from the internet. It's a legitimate professional certification that qualifies me to assess and manage community safety risks." That's when things got heated. Bob Mitchell stood up with his own violation notice. "Karen, you're trying to confiscate my hunting rifles, claiming they're community safety hazards. Firearms represent significant liability risks in residential communities. Proper safety management requires centralized storage and controlled access." "Centralized storage? You want me to give you my guns?" "I want you to comply with professional safety standards that protect all residents from unnecessary risks." Sarah Davis stood up next. "You tried to take my garden shears and hedge trimmers? Sharp gardening tools must be properly secured and regulated to prevent accidental injuries. They're in my locked garden shed. Locked sheds don't provide adequate security for hazardous equipment that could be accessed by children or used inappropriately." The room erupted in angry voices as residents realized the scope of Karen's control campaign. She wants to ban all outdoor equipment. She's trying to confiscate everyone's tools and gear. This is exactly why we moved away from the city. Karen tried to regain control by shouting over everyone. "People! You need to understand that community safety requires difficult decisions. Individual recreational preferences cannot override collective safety obligations." "Safety obligations to who?" I called out. "To children, to elderly residents, to visitors, to anyone who might be injured by improperly managed recreational equipment." "Improperly managed? I've been fishing safely for 60 years. Past experience doesn't guarantee future safety. Accidents happen when people become complacent about safety protocols." Tom Wilson called for order and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make it absolutely clear that the HOA board has never authorized Karen Mitchell to take anyone's equipment, assess safety violations, or collect penalties. Everything she's been doing is unauthorized and illegitimate. That's completely false, Karen shot back. I have full emergency authority to address immediate safety risks. Show us the board vote that granted you this authority. The authority is inherent in the emergency safety situation that the board failed to address. Karen, you can't grant yourself authority that doesn't exist. I can and I have. Someone needs to protect this community from negligent recreational activities. The next morning, I was organizing my tackle box when I heard vehicles pulling into my driveway. Looking out the window, I saw Karen and two men wearing matching Pine Lake Safety Services uniforms. I went outside to find Karen directing the two men toward my garage like she was conducting a military operation. Mr. Richardson, we're here to conduct the mandatory equipment confiscation outlined in your final violation notice. You're here to do what? To remove dangerous recreational equipment from your property for community safety storage pending compliance. Certification. The two men with her looked uncomfortable and avoided eye contact. I later learned they were Karen's cousin Danny and brother-in-law Steve, who she had convinced to help her by claiming she had official authority and offering them payment for their enforcement services. Karen, you have no authority to take my property. I have complete authority under emergency safety protocols. These officers are here to ensure the confiscation proceeds safely and legally. Officers? Who are these people? They're certified safety enforcement professionals from Pine Lake Safety Services, a licensed community safety company that I've contracted to handle dangerous equipment removal. I looked at their uniforms more closely and realized they were clearly homemade or purchased online. The Pine Lake Safety Services patches looked like they had been sewn on that morning, and the uniforms didn't match each other properly. Karen, these aren't real officers, and Pine Lake Safety Services doesn't exist. It most certainly does exist. I've filed all the proper paperwork to establish a legitimate safety enforcement company. Show me the business license. I don't need to show you anything. The business is properly licensed and authorized to conduct safety enforcement activities. She directed the fake officers toward my garage. Gentlemen, please begin with the most dangerous items, the sharp objects, hooks, knives, gaffs, and any other potentially hazardous fishing equipment. Stop right there, I said firmly. You are not taking anything from my garage. Mr. Richardson, interfering with official safety enforcement is a serious violation that will result in additional penalties and possible criminal charges for obstruction. Official enforcement? Karen, you're trespassing on my property with fake officers trying to steal my belongings. We're not stealing anything. We're temporarily removing hazardous equipment for community safety storage until you can demonstrate proper safety compliance. Proper safety compliance for fishing equipment? Yes! Fishing equipment storage requires proper security measures, safety training, and compliance documentation to ensure community welfare. One of the fake officers, Karen's cousin Danny, finally spoke up. Aunt Karen, maybe we should check with Officer Johnson. Please proceed with the confiscation as directed. Time is critical when dealing with safety hazards. Karen, I said, I'm calling the real police right now. Go ahead. They'll find that we're operating under full legal authority and proper safety enforcement protocols. I went inside and called 911, explaining that someone was trying to steal my property using fake authority and impersonating police officers. When I came back outside, Karen was actually in my garage, putting my carefully organized fishing equipment into boxes. Get out of my garage! I'm conducting authorized equipment removal for community safety purposes. This equipment poses immediate dangers that cannot be allowed to continue. You're committing burglary. I'm preventing potential accidents and injuries that could result from improperly stored dangerous equipment. Someone has to prioritize community safety over individual recreational preferences. Karen was now systematically going through my tackle boxes, pulling out hooks, lures, and fishing tools. Look at these! Dozens of sharp hooks, multiple knives, gaffs that could be used as weapons. This is exactly the kind of hazardous equipment that has no place in a residential community. Those are fishing supplies. Those are dangerous weapons disguised as recreational equipment. Any one of these items could cause serious injury or death if misused. By the time the real police arrived, Karen had loaded several boxes of my fishing gear into her vehicle, and was preparing to take my expensive fishing rods as well. Officer Mike Stevens took one look at the situation and immediately understood what was happening. Karen was standing in my garage holding my prize fishing rod while her two fake officers were loading boxes into her SUV. "Ma'am, step away from the property and explain what's going on here." "Officer, I'm Karen Mitchell, Community Safety Coordinator for Pine Lake Estates. I'm conducting authorized confiscation of dangerous recreational equipment that poses immediate safety risks to our residents." "Authorized by whom?" "By the emergency safety protocols that I've implemented to protect our community from preventable accidents and liability exposure." Officer Stevens looked at me. "Mr. Richardson, is this woman authorized to take your property?" "Absolutely not. She's my neighbor who's been harassing me about my fishing equipment for months. She has no authority to take anything." "Ma'am, do you have official documentation showing you have authority to confiscate this man's property?" Karen produced her homemade safety manual and fake certificate with great ceremony. "This comprehensive community safety manual clearly outlines my authority to remove hazardous equipment that threatens resident welfare." Officer Stevens examined the documents carefully. "Ma'am, these appear to be homemade documents created on a personal computer. Do you have official law enforcement authority?" "I have community safety authority that supersedes general law enforcement in matters of residential safety management and equipment control." "That's not how authority works, ma'am. You can't supersede law enforcement with documents you created yourself." "Officer, you clearly don't understand modern community governance and safety management protocols. My authority derives from established safety regulations and community protection mandates." At this point, Karen's two fake officers were backing away from the situation as quickly as possible, apparently realizing they had been tricked into helping with criminal activity. "Ma'am, I need you to return Mr. Richardson's property immediately. I will not return dangerous equipment to unsafe storage conditions. This man's fishing gear represents a clear and present threat to community safety that cannot be ignored." "Ma'am, fishing equipment is not a threat to community safety. Fishing equipment contains multiple sharp objects that could cause serious injuries if not properly controlled." Karen's voice exploded to a volume that could be heard 3 houses away. "Ma'am, please lower your voice." "I will not lower my voice when discussing critical safety issues. Fishing hooks cause thousands of emergency room visits every year. Fillet knives are lethal weapons. Fishing lines can cause strangulation accidents." Officer Stevens was clearly losing patience. "Ma'am, you've taken someone's property without authorization. That's theft." "It's not theft. It's emergency safety management. It's community protection. It's preventing accidents before they happen. It's theft. Return the property now or you'll be arrested." "You can't arrest me for protecting community safety. I'm operating under legitimate authority granted by emergency safety protocols." "Ma'am, you have no legitimate authority. Return the property." Karen's response was to get back in her vehicle and try to drive away with my fishing equipment still loaded in the back. "I'm taking this equipment to secure storage where it can't endanger community residents," she shouted through her car window. Officer Stevens immediately moved to block her vehicle and arrest her for theft and trespassing. As they put her in handcuffs, Karen launched into the most delusional rant I had ever witnessed. "This is persecution of community safety professionals. You people don't understand the liability risks of uncontrolled recreational equipment. When someone gets injured by improperly stored fishing gear, you'll realize that I was trying to prevent tragedy." "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent." "I don't want to remain silent. I want everyone to understand that community safety requires difficult decisions. Individual recreational preferences cannot override collective welfare and accident prevention." As they loaded her into the patrol car, Karen was still screaming about fishing equipment dangers and community safety protocols. "This arrest will encourage dangerous recreational activities throughout our community. Property values will decline when insurance companies realize we have uncontrolled hazardous equipment storage." After Karen's arrest, Officer Stevens and Detective Lisa Morrison began investigating the scope of her fake authority campaign. What they found was far more extensive and calculated than anyone had realized. Karen had been systematically targeting outdoor enthusiasts throughout Pine Lake Estates and beyond, using fake safety violations to harass anyone whose activities she disapproved of, while simultaneously running an elaborate theft and extortion operation. She had created an entire fake regulatory framework, complete with professionally formatted safety manuals and violation forms, fake certification documents and authority credentials, a non-existent Pine Lake Safety Services enforcement company, elaborate penalty and confiscation procedures, a sophisticated online presence with fake testimonials and case studies. Mr. Richardson, Detective Morrison told me during our follow-up interview, Mrs. Mitchell has been operating what amounts to a fake government agency to control your neighbor's outdoor activities while stealing their property and extorting money. How many people has she been targeting? At least 37 families in your community and neighboring areas. She's collected over $28,000 in fake safety violation penalties and stolen equipment worth an estimated $15,000. $28,000? People actually paid her fake fines? Elderly residents, mostly. People who were intimidated by her official-sounding documents, fake authority, and threats of equipment confiscation or legal action. Detective Morrison showed me the evidence of Karen's systematic targeting operation. Bob Mitchell had paid $1,200. In hunting equipment storage violations, Sarah Davis paid $800 for gardening tool safety penalties. The elderly Peterson couple paid $2,100 for fishing gear compliance fees. Tom and Martha Wilson paid $1,500 for camping equipment hazard assessments. Multiple families had paid hundreds of dollars in fake safety inspections and equipment evaluations. She was running a complete criminal enterprise, Detective Morrison explained, using fake authority to extort money from people who enjoyed outdoor activities while simultaneously stealing their equipment to sell online. Where was all this money going? Into her personal bank account, which she used to fund her lifestyle and pay for increasingly elaborate fake documentation. She was also using the money to expand her operation to other communities. But the most disturbing discovery was that Karen had been keeping detailed files on potential victims, including personal information about their outdoor activities and equipment, financial assessments of their ability to pay fake penalties, vulnerability profiles focusing on elderly residents living alone, strategic plans for escalating harassment and extortion. She had psychological profiles of elderly residents, documenting their fears and vulnerabilities, Detective Morrison told me. This wasn't random harassment. It was calculated targeting of people she thought would be easiest to intimidate and exploit. Because Karen's fake authority scheme involved impersonating government officials and creating fraudulent regulatory agencies, the FBI became involved in the case within a week of her arrest. Special Agent Sarah Chen contacted me personally to discuss the federal implications of Karen's criminal enterprise. Mr. Richardson, we believe Mrs. Mitchell's activities constitute multiple federal crimes related to fraud, impersonation of government authority, and elder abuse across state lines. How is this a federal case? When someone creates fake government agencies and impersonates official authority to extort money, that becomes federal fraud. Also, her systematic targeting of elderly residents constitutes elder abuse under federal law. But there's something else we've discovered that makes this case even more serious. Agent Chen explained that the FBI had been tracking similar schemes across the country where people used fake HOA authority to control and extort their neighbors. And Karen appeared to be connected to a larger network. Mrs. Mitchell's operation is one of the most elaborate we've seen, but we've found evidence that she's been teaching her methods to others and receiving guidance from people running similar schemes in different states. The federal investigation revealed that Karen had been part of an online community called Community Safety Professionals, where people shared techniques for creating fake authority positions and extracting money from neighbors under the guise of safety enforcement. She was essentially part of a criminal network that was franchising harassment and extortion techniques to people in communities across multiple states, Agent Chen told me. The FBI had obtained search warrants for Karen's computer and phone records, which revealed communications with similar operators in 12 different states, detailed manuals for creating fake safety violations, templates for official looking, documents and authority credentials, training materials for targeting elderly and vulnerable residents, financial records showing payments to and from other network members. She wasn't just stealing from your community, Agent Chen explained. She was part of a coordinated network that was systematically targeting outdoor enthusiasts and elderly residents across the country. While Karen was out on bail awaiting trial, the HOA board called a community meeting to address the situation and make sure residents understood that all of Karen's safety violations and penalties were completely fake and that she would face consequences for her actions. Karen showed up to the meeting, apparently believing she could still justify her criminal actions to the community and possibly convince people that she had been acting in their best interests. The community center was packed with residents who had been victimized by her schemes, along with many others who wanted to hear how she would defend the indefensible and witness what many expected to be a final confrontation. Tom Wilson opened the meeting by stating clearly, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Pine Lake Estates HOA board wants to make it absolutely clear that Karen Mitchell has never had any authority to enforce safety regulations, collect penalties, or confiscate equipment. Everything she's been doing is unauthorized, illegal, and criminal." Karen immediately stood up, her voice filled with indignation. "That's completely and utterly false. I have documented authority based on emergency safety protocols and established community protection mandates." "Karen, you made up fake documents and fake authority. That's not legitimate governance. I researched legitimate safety regulations and implemented appropriate community protections based on established best practices. Just because you people don't understand modern safety management doesn't make it fake or illegal." Bob Mitchell stood up with a folder of violation notices. "Karen, you stole $1,500 from me claiming my hunting equipment was dangerous to the community. Your hunting equipment is dangerous. Firearms and ammunition have absolutely no place in residential communities where children and families live. Someone has to prioritize safety over recreational preferences. It's legal hunting equipment stored in my locked gun safe in my own garage. Legal doesn't mean safe. Gun safes can be broken into. Children could access weapons. Accidents happen when people become complacent about firearm safety." Sarah Davis joined the confrontation. "You tried to confiscate my garden tools claiming they were weapons. Sharp gardening tools can be used as weapons. Hedge trimmers, pruning shears, and garden knives represent significant safety risks if not properly controlled and monitored. They're gardening tools stored in my locked shed. Locked sheds provide inadequate security for potentially dangerous equipment. Children could break in, tools could be stolen and used inappropriately. Community safety requires centralized control of all sharp objects." The room was getting angrier as Karen continued to justify her criminal harassment campaign with increasingly delusional safety claims. I stood up to address her directly. "Karen, you tried to steal my fishing equipment claiming it was dangerous. I've been fishing safely for 60 years without a single serious accident." "Past experience doesn't guarantee future safety," Karen screamed, her voice echoing through the community center. "Fishing hooks cause thousands of injuries every year. Fillet knives are lethal weapons that could kill someone. Fishing lines can cause strangulation accidents. Someone has to protect this community from these documented risks." Protect the community from fishing, one of the safest outdoor activities there is? Protect the community from uncontrolled recreational activities that create massive liability exposure and safety risks that could bankrupt our HOA through lawsuits. Tom Wilson tried to calm the situation. "Karen, even if fishing equipment posed significant risks, which it doesn't, you had absolutely no authority to confiscate anyone's property or collect money. I had emergency authority based on the board's complete failure to address urgent safety, issues that threatened resident welfare. You can't grant yourself emergency authority that doesn't exist? I can and I did. When legitimate authorities fail to protect public safety, concerned citizens have both the right and the duty to take necessary protective action. Necessary action doesn't include stealing people's property and selling it online. I didn't steal anything. I temporarily removed dangerous equipment for comprehensive safety evaluation and community protection storage. Where exactly is this community safety storage? Bob Mitchell demanded. In secure locations that meet appropriate security standards for hazardous equipment storage and evaluation? What secure locations? Be specific. Locations that provide adequate security, climate control, and access restrictions for dangerous equipment that poses risks to community residents. Detective Morrison, who had been observing the meeting to gather additional evidence, stood up with a folder of documents. Mrs. Mitchell, we found your stolen equipment in your garage, your storage unit, and listed for sale on multiple online auction sites. There was no secure community storage facility. That equipment was being comprehensively evaluated for safety compliance before being returned to owners who could demonstrate proper storage capabilities. You were selling it online for profit. Mrs. Mitchell, we have the auction records and payment receipts. The room erupted in angry shouts as residents realized the full scope of Karen's criminal operation. She was selling our stuff for money. This wasn't about safety, it was about theft and profit. She's been running a criminal enterprise in our community. Karen tried desperately to defend herself, but was now completely cornered by the evidence. I was not selling anything for profit. I was conducting comprehensive safety assessments and compliance evaluations that required disposal of equipment that failed safety standards. On eBay and Craigslist, Detective Morrison asked, any equipment that couldn't meet safety standards had to be disposed of through appropriate channels that recovered storage and evaluation costs. Appropriate channels like online auctions where you pocketed the money. Equipment that couldn't be safely returned to owners had to be disposed of in ways that recovered legitimate storage, evaluation, and administrative costs. The crowd was now furious as they realized Karen had been systematically stealing their belongings and selling them for profit while claiming it was for their own safety and protection. Tom Wilson called for order, but residents were demanding immediate action. We want our money back. She needs to be in prison. How many other people has she stolen from? Security had to escort Karen from the meeting as residents shouted demands that she return their property and money immediately. As she was being led out, Karen made one final desperate attempt to justify her actions. You people will regret this when someone gets seriously injured by uncontrolled recreational equipment. I was the only person protecting this community from preventable accidents and liability disasters. Karen's trial began 6 months later and became a community sensation. The federal courthouse was packed with Pine Lake Estates residents who wanted to see justice served. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Robert Martinez, presented overwhelming evidence of Karen's fake authority scheme. Bank records showing over $25,000 in fraudulent collections, evidence of equipment theft and online sales testimony from dozens of victims, expert testimony about the completely fabricated nature of her safety regulations. The most damning evidence was Karen's own documentation, the fake safety manuals, violation forms, and authority certificates that she had created to justify her harassment campaign. Karen's defense attorney tried to argue that she had genuinely believed she was protecting the community and had acted in good faith. But when Karen insisted on testifying in her own defense, she destroyed any chance of sympathy from the jury. Mrs. Mitchell, did you have actual authority to confiscate your neighbor's property? The prosecutor asked. I had emergency safety authority based on the community's failure to address dangerous recreational activities. Authority granted by whom? Authority inherent in the emergency safety situation that required immediate action to protect residents from harm. So you granted yourself this authority? I implemented necessary safety protocols when legitimate authorities failed to address urgent risks. Did you sell equipment that you confiscated from your neighbors? I disposed of equipment that failed safety evaluations through appropriate channels that recovered storage and assessment costs. Through eBay auctions? Through legal disposal methods that ensured dangerous equipment couldn't harm community residents. Karen's testimony continued for 2 days, and she never showed any acknowledgement that her actions had been wrong. These people were endangering our community with uncontrolled recreational activities. Someone had to implement proper safety management. Mrs. Mitchell, Fishing is not an uncontrolled, dangerous activity. Fishing involves multiple sharp objects, potential drowning risks, and exposure to environmental hazards. Children could be injured by improperly stored hooks and knives. So you decided to steal everyone's fishing equipment? I decided to implement emergency safety measures that previous authorities had failed to establish. The jury was clearly disgusted by Karen's complete lack of remorse and continued justification of stealing from her neighbors. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding Karen guilty on all charges: federal fraud, multiple counts; theft, multiple counts; elder abuse, federal charges; impersonation of government authority; wire fraud for online sales of stolen property; conspiracy to commit fraud. When the verdict was read, Karen's reaction was explosive. "This is a miscarriage of justice. I was protecting community safety. You people are criminalizing legitimate safety management." The federal judge, Patricia Williams, was clearly disgusted by Karen's crimes and her complete lack of remorse. "Mrs. Mitchell, you systematically targeted your neighbors with fake authority, stole their property, and extorted money from elderly residents. You showed no respect for their rights, their safety, or their property. Your actions represent a profound betrayal of community trust. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay full restitution of $47,000 to your victims. You are permanently barred from serving in any HOA capacity." Karen's final statement to the court was predictably delusional. "This sentence will encourage dangerous recreational activities throughout American communities. You're criminalizing safety management and endangering public welfare." After Karen's conviction, Pine Lake Estates had to rebuild both as a community and financially. Her theft and fraud had damaged relationships and created suspicion among neighbors. But in some ways, the experience brought us closer together. We had all learned the importance of questioning authority and supporting each other against people who would abuse positions of trust. The stolen money was gradually recovered through asset forfeiture. Karen's house, cars, and belongings were sold to pay restitution to victims.